The focus of the conversation today is on the SSFL. And of course, we're having this conversation because of the imminent election on Thursday to choose the new president of the league. Uh, Clearly, this is a transitional moment, and it is an opportunity for us in the football fraternity to discuss, uh, what your plans are, how you see the league, etc. We'll start off by you sharing with us what your background is in with respect to the SSFL, your experiences in the game, and what motivated you to seek out this opportunity.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to share my experiences, Mr. Shambi C,
Correct.
on the SSFL and football at large. As a matter of fact, in 1988, when I entered into the secondary school system after having transitioned from the primary school in 1981, I started there. I continue, even at that time and even up to now, have a lot of interest in sporting disciplines. And that is why even at the Teachers College, Valentine Teachers College, I was caught between psychology, music, and physical education to choose from as an elective. And I chose physical education because I saw how that could have incorporated and still does all the other subject areas. And I have no regrets for being part of it. And it is in 1988 that I did the referees course, actually playing football at the highest level, national youth level. But then after I decided I will want to make a contribution into football at the officiating level. And that is why in 1988 I did the referees course, and I officiated locally for a number of years until in 1994 I was appointed to the FIFA Assistant Referees Panel. As a matter of fact, in 1990 was the first time in the history of football in the Caribbean that we had the first appointment of an individual in the person of Douglas James, former teacher at Malik Secondary and live at Belmont. Good friend of mine also. I was also nominated, but because I didn't have enough years at the national level, I had to wait until a few more years to be considered. And I came onto the panel in 1994, and I have no regrets. I thank God for it, because being part of the referees fraternity, it has allowed me to travel throughout the length and breadth of the globe, all 6 continents, and in some countries on more than one occasion, officiating in many different types of competitions: CFU, Caribbean Football Union, Concacaf, including the Gold Cup, a number of youth under 17 world tournaments, inclusive of under 20 tournaments, female under 17, under 20, and even the Senior World Cup, and also being involved as an instructor at some of these very same World Cups, and also being involved with the Confederation Cup in Japan for several years. Having said that, when I got into the secondary school system, immediately around 1990, I became a member of the secondary school football league. So over those years, I have gained a tremendous amount of knowledge, experience, competency in knowing the operation of the SSFL, serving in various capacities and positions. That is, for example, assistant secretary, and I'm referring to the zone this time because we have 6 zones, vice chairman, and I've been the chairman of the East Zone since 2010, and I'm presently still the chairman. I'm also involved as the member of the National Disciplinary Committee, former member of the Appeals Committee, presently one of the match commissioners in the league for the Premier Division. And with that having said, I felt that with that wealth of experience, I can only make a contribution to the SSFL that would afford them to go to the other level and to lift the status image. And to more importantly, Mr. Chambi, the most important benefactors of our efforts are the student athletes. And all of my efforts primarily is focusing on ensuring that the student athletes gain maximum benefits of all of our efforts through the SSFL. And it's in light of that in particular that I am now thrown my hat, so to speak, in the ring to contest the presidency of the Secondary School Football League.
What's the biggest challenge for anyone assuming the mantle of SSFL presidency at this time?
As far as the biggest challenge, as a matter of fact, when I look clearly, as you would know and the world will know, we have had and continue now to be going through a bit of transition, even with the governing body, the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association. And that in itself, while it is being worked out, the SSFL as an entity that is also a contributor, especially for the youth development football in the country, it's about ensuring that one work closely, harmoniously, in collaboration with the governing body, even as they move through this transition, to regroup, to revamp themselves. And that in itself, it is going to be a bit of challenge, but I can see it being, we are able to work it out in a very harmonious way and a productive way, simply because of the quality of the persons that we have in the SSFL and the desire of other persons who are stakeholders in football in Trinidad and Tobago, who would really like to see us return to the point of being one of the powerhouses in football, not only in the Caribbean, but in the Concacaf and the world at large.
So let's contextualize that. Where does the SSFL as a product on the field and off the field, where do you place it in the structure and hierarchy of football in the broader sense in Trinidad and Tobago?
Secondary School Football League is one of the most successful leagues that we have in the country and still remains. One has to also understand too that it is one of the sporting disciplines that is afforded to the students in the secondary schools for just a 3-month period, while there are other sporting disciplines, basketball, netball, swimming, volleyball, hockey, badminton, etc. So all of that has to be basically cramped into a 12-month period. So the SSFL in itself is providing this platform for the student athletes who are interested in football to showcase their talent, some obviously with only the interests of enjoying themselves for the period of time that they're in a secondary school. For some others, they see it further, they see it a lot more than that, which is to aspire to work towards a football scholarship. And for those who maybe want to even go further, a professional contract. So in relation to the TTFA, we are really a contributor to youth development football. But in doing that, we have to ensure that we work harmoniously in collaboration with the same philosophy, the same football structure, so that therefore players that are emanating out of the SSFL will have a smooth transition into the national youth teams.
So as an observer of football in Trinidad and Tobago, it occurs to me that there's a level of complacency about the need to grow the game. In other words, football is one of our historical staples, but how are we, how do we attract participation, right? People come through the doors of the school, they do the entrance exam, they go into Form 1, and then it's sort of like you see who already has a level of competency in the game. But they're likely, and that is a factor that also led to schools going outside of the institution to bring players in because they wanted to add to their core. But there are likely students who are within the compound who have a level of competency that can be nurtured and grown. So within the context of your first form, under 14, under 16, and the big boys, there's still this sense that, well, we have what we have, but what is the role of the SSFL vis-a-vis the schools to try to prime a little bit more out of that if we're talking about development? Because really, are we developing those who are already on the pipeline, or are we really adding anyone to the pipeline?
Good question. For example, as a physical education teacher, what I would have done during my period and tenure at secondary school is that I would have worked closely in conjunction with the football coach, meaning that within my subject area, because of the advantageous position I am in, I would have been able to monitor, observe, assess, evaluate these students to see which area that they are skilled in, and therefore now furnish and supply the football coach with the players who are showing semblance of skills in that particular area. One has to also understand too that football is, with all due respect to all the other sporting discipline, it is the most popular single sporting event in the world outside of the Olympics. That is multidiscipline. And therefore, working closely in conjunction with the primary school system, where the very same student athletes, and more primarily in football, will be coming out of the primary school system. It is working with them, monitoring them, and as they come into the Form 1, and that is why we have a Form 1 league, and that is why I was so happy that we now have sponsorship for the Form 1, because it's all about ensuring that the foundation, even at the primary school level, but as we're speaking about the secondary school level, the Form 1s, the nurturing ground of the secondary school is supported with the technical and resource and other major type of resources to provide them with that platform, to give them the necessary assistance to achieve their goals and aspiration, knowing fully well, that in doing that, we need to ensure that the technical support is well qualified, certified, competent enough, so that some of the even better coaches that we have in the country should be and ought to, and some of them are, working in the lower division. Because if the foundation is laid effectively, efficiently, and properly, then the building of the structure to the other higher age group in the national teams will be stronger, better, and then we will be a greater force to reckon with when they move and they graduate into the national senior team, men as well as women.
So definitely the idea of having a Form 1 league is visionary, and it is something that was or should have happened even way before it did. But the fact that it exists now is absolutely a positive for the SSFL. Does that also exist on the girls' side, or are they more blended together, Form 1, 2, and 3?
As you would be aware, female football globally is playing second fiddle. However, FIFA has recognized the importance of the contribution of females, so much so that there's a slogan, the future of football is feminine. And if you look closely, many years ago, what would have happened? All female World Cups would have been officiated by men. Now all female World Cups are being officiated and tournaments are being officiated by female referees. But we have gone a little further, Sachambi, where now FIFA has indicated that if a female is as good as or sometimes even better than, then she can and would be given the opportunity now, as it is now in 2021, to officiate with the men in men's competition. And they are even shortlisted now for the upcoming World Cups. So let's return now inside of the SSFL and the football at large, right? Within the secondary school football league. There is the concerted effort to build the structure for the girls football in the primary school. And I'm saying, while the boys are very well taken care of, gradually the girls are coming along, and it means very soon one of the expectation is to actually even have a Form 1 girls competition. Why? Because there's the under 15 we have presently. Then subsequent to the under 15, there's an age group of 5 years, which is the senior. So we would like to see, at least I would also like to see with the General Council discussing and agreeing upon it, that we focus on also having a girls competition for the Form 1s. Why? Because some of the very same Form 1 girls, they are now, because there is no Form 1 competition for girls, they are now forced to play in the under 15. And if we know about the physiological and emotional makeup of the human anatomy and the human being, is that while you would want to give them a higher level of competition, we have to be very mindful of the growth, physical and otherwise, that we don't push them to a higher level. Otherwise, it can cause disenchantment, it can cause unnecessary injury, it can cause uninterest in the sport, and we'll lose players if we don't organize it in a very structured, systematic way, analytical way, so that we can reap the best out of these student athletes in moving forward from one age group to the next.
What does the SSFL do well?
In the context of?
Just broadly, its function as an entity.
Lovely. Secondary School Football League. Now, let's not get complacent here or overconfident. There is a lot of hype in the Secondary School Football League, as we know in the Caribbean, Jamaica, St. Kitts Nevis, Barbados, etc. We don't want to lose now the quality of the football at the expense of the hype of the football, or vice versa. But what Secondary School Football League brings to the table is that much anticipated season for not only the student athletes within the school, but for the entire football community, right? All the stakeholders are on board. The players, the family members, the parents, the guardians, the coaches, the trainers, the managers, the administrators, the sponsors. So it is a much anticipated event now. And why is it a much anticipated event, Mr. Chambi? It's because, and I would like to commend the tremendous effort of the previous administrators of the Secondary School Football League, with working themselves to the point where they made tremendous headway in bringing the status and the image of the SSFL to what it is at this present moment. So much so that you would also understand and realize that we have Sportsmax on board. This is unlike the even, and this is not in any way to compare, but it's just an analogy to show that some of the more established leagues in the country, like the Super League and even the Pro League, in one season may not have the current establishment or the opportunity to have their games being recorded and shown live, and in this case by Sportsmax. So returning to the initial question, there is that great expectation. There is also the opportunity for the student athletes to showcase their talents so that scouts from the local, regional, and international framework can have an opportunity to see them. And in most cases, 9 out of 10, those who are able to achieve and cover all the criteria are successful in getting, if not half scholarship, in most cases, full scholarships, football scholarships, that is.
And what does the league do poorly?
Poorly? Hey, I wonder what does the league do poorly, but we have to be honest here. All right, one of the areas that I saw of the recent past, and this is something that we have to work on, definitely. And it was an effort to progress, but we have some teething problems within the last few years in getting it organized and getting it well done. And that is the initial registration process for getting players prior to the season. That the system that we have in place, it is not working. And I think it's not because of the inability for it to be done properly. It's just maybe the correct selection of the personnel that is considered to provide a system is not as competent as he or she ought to be. And therefore, I believe for the last few years, that is still something that we are working on, but I'm definitely sure we're going to get it corrected, rectified, so that part of the system will be a smooth transition prior to the commencement of the season.
So if we transport ourselves to Friday morning, it's after the election, and you have won, what are your top 3 priorities?
Well, I am wondering if you would have seen my manifesto.
I've seen your poster. I don't know if I've seen the manifesto.
Yeah, I had the flyers and the manifesto and everything like that up on the Facebook page, etc. So,
well, this is the avenue to put it out there.
That's correct. Lovely. And I thank you for it. I would be rather heartened and elated to be victorious, as I am confident in moving forward to achieve such. And thereafter, as one of the statements in my flyer states, I'm a team player and I'm not going to be doing anything on my own. Certainly not. It's not going to be dictatorial, autocratic, but not that I'm going to be a laissez-faire leader neither, because one has to know which leadership style to use based on the present existing situation. But certainly working in collaboration with all the relevant personnel to ensure that we have, in this COVID-19 pandemic season and period that we are in, Mr. Chambi, wondering whether or not we will have a normal season. Well, we're not going to have a normal season because we are in abnormal times now, and I don't think we'll return to the norm. However, we will plan with the General Council, I should say, plan as if we expect to have an upcoming current season in September with fixtures, etc., like that, talking to sponsors, bringing them on board and letting them be part of our process as if everything is normal. But we need to have plan B or C or D or E. Why? Because plan A, which is the initial expectation, may not be materialized. And that is why one of the consideration is to possibly have, with sharing with the General Council, putting it at a vote with the General Council to see how we can arrive at possibly having other activities for the student athletes to engage in, so that they would not be left at the side, unoccupied. They wouldn't be left unattended. They wouldn't lose interest in the game, but we will engage them in possibly a skills challenge competition because there are various skills in football, and we can engage them in a zonal level, and then maybe at a national level in the in the skills challenge competition. We can also possibly look at having a virtual competition, which means online with them, but to still keep their interests in the game of football. But more importantly too, there are some students who are knocking on the door very, very assertively and very optimistically towards working towards a football scholarship. Now, it does not mean not having a season should deny these students from the opportunity to get a scholarship. So we will work with that understanding to at least ensure that there is something that they are occupied with that could still be added to their resume in a very holistic, productive, and beneficial way, and it could work towards their advantage, so they still could be considered to seeking a sporting scholarship, this case a football scholarship, local, regional, or international. Having said that, I would like to also see, rather than have different entities, different individuals, different agencies, different organizations, who may very well have good intentions, who may very well want to see the best for the student athletes, acting as a medium or a middle person or a body to create the opportunities for these students to attain their scholarships, that the Secondary School Football League makes a concerted effort to drive towards having an organized, well-structured SAT and scholarship acquisition program in place, so that therefore by the time the student reaches Form 2 into Form 3, they will already have a very good idea of what they need to work at with the criteria that is necessary for those who are interested in pursuing scholarship when they move on after having completed their secondary school tenure.
So it strikes me that while I recognize the practicalities and the limitations of COVID, government policy, and just that reality, you did touch on something that I hoped you would touch on with respect to whether there's an impact on prospective students going abroad for scholarships. But it also seems to me that there should be a way. I mean, we have tertiary institutions, we have smart people in the country. The notion that there can't be a scientific component and modeling where there's still some type of playing activity, to me, for a country with the ambitions that we have and the medical community, etc., it seems that we need to weigh in a little bit more aggressively to see that we have an outcome. So let me submit, for example, that I like to make the linkage between futsal and football, because futsal is relatively new to our environment, but it seems to me to be an area in which the SSFL can have some buy-in, because it's also a way of growing the sport, teaching the sport to a new generation, but also enhancing skills. And it could be that in the current COVID environment, if we go to an economy of scale and a scale down, maybe that is an option rather than a bigger scale 11v11. But I still think in the future, there should be some contemplation of perhaps how the SSFL could relate to the Futsal Association. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm smiling because you have intimated a brilliant idea, and that is the futsal. Again, in my manifesto, and I started off being part of the futsal in 2002, 2003. Also futsal referee. Also a futsal instructor in the Concacaf region for a few years. As a matter of fact, in my zone, we embarked on one particular year to have the futsal in the off season prior to September, and it was a success. A 2 day, a 1 weekend event. It is always my understanding thereafter that to encourage the secondary school football league, not only in my zone, the East Zone, but in the South, in the North, in Tobago, in Central, to also embark on an off-season futsal season. Because why? Some of the best players in the world, including the very same Messi and Ronaldo and Robinho, and I could go on and on, Neymar, etc. They all emanated out of futsal. As a matter of fact, when we look at players who are warming up on the field in groups of 4 or 6 or 10, when there's somebody in the middle and they're passing the ball around without trying to prevent him from touching it, that in itself is futsal, because futsal is a quick passing game and you got to be thinking quickly while on your feet. So if that is actually done, it means that we are preparing the athletes for the season. But let's come to the COVID-19 pandemic that we're in now. So that is also another grand opportunity. Hey, working along with who? The Ministry of Education, working along with the Ministry of Health, working along with the sports company and the Ministry of Sport and Youth Development, to show them the advantage, as long as all the necessary health and safety protocols are observed, that it will be a grand opportunity and blessings to have such an event, because at least it will be a semblance, if not of the whole field, the football field, the 11-a-side, at least it will still be a semblance of, even if you have a 7-a-side on the big fieldy grass, even if it is indoor, it is still going to occupy them. It is still going to have them involved in the very same type of skills that we were referring to earlier about the skills challenge, the passing, the dribbling, the trapping, the shooting, the goalkeeping, etc. like that. Even though it will be of a different surface, at least still we could support it primarily because it will bring that level of semblance to the game of the 11-a-side, which we will still be able to accomplish in a successful way, and again assist the student athletes with aspiring to their dreams, their goals, and their aspirations.
So let's talk about some structural considerations within our reality. What in your perception is the weakest zone of the 6 zones?
I wouldn't like to say the word maybe weakest zones. Maybe we'll have strong and we have stronger zones, because to me all the zones are strong, right? Even as small as they are, because there's advantage when you're even small, because you have a containment of ensuring that in a small area that you work in a very productive and harmonious way. For example, Tobago is our smallest zone, followed by Central Zone, right? And then we have the North Zone, and then the two largest zones are the East and South. Good. Now, look at the advantage here. North Zone in itself, because the facilities are within near distance from each other, that in itself is a great advantage, because they don't have to go far for their home and away games, right? Maybe just 15 minutes drive or 10 minutes drive away from there. While in, for example, South or even in the East, you could end up having some time to drive for maybe 30 minutes, 40 minutes to reach your venue. Tobago zone, which gets a great deal of support from the Tobago House of Assembly, which we are grateful for, working in collaboration with the Secondary School Football League. We because of the distance of the separation of the two islands by water, then the traveling between becomes a bit of a challenge. It is not improbable. It is not impossible. As a matter of fact, we have been able to work it out in a very productive way so that both parties, the team going across to Tobago or the one coming from Tobago can get across here and still play their game. We have to take into consideration if they're going to be traveling by boat or if they're going to be traveling by air, and accommodation being an X factor. And that's why I wouldn't say that there's any weak link. You have strong and you have stronger zones. No. If I may look at the stronger part of some zones, is that the resources that are afforded to all the zones. What is important here is not only the resources, Mr. Chambi, but it's how you use the resources that you have before you. Because the secondary school football league will ensure, right? For example, in the lower divisions, you get a $1,000 grant, providing that your school is not playing in the championship or the premiership division. Because the championship, you get a few more $1,000, and then in the premier division, you get the highest amount. So the lower division school that is not involved in championship or premier division will get a base of $1,000. How you use that $1,000 in addition to what you have within your own setup in the school is up to you. So one of my main concern and goals too is to try and provide an even greater support system within the schools, so that therefore, if we have all the schools in the zone and all the schools within the zones, it means, and they are all afforded and they all utilize the resources efficiently and effectively, then the level of competition will raise, certainly. And because what we have in one or two schools is because they tend, because of a very strong or a stronger parent-teachers association, or because of a very powerful working alumni, which is critical, right? Then you will find that the support is a bit greater, and therefore the players just have to focus on playing for their school, because all the other areas leading up to them going on the match is being taken care of. All their needs and their wants and their goals are being taken care of off the field. That now in itself is something that I would like to see happen with all the schools. Not that one school is struggling to get, for example, sponsorship or uniform for their players, and sometimes they have to have some frequent, serious fundraisers, which is not really a negative, because fundraisers are there to bring in some monies to offset and incur the expenses. But to also have stronger alumni. And Mr. Chambi, what I am also one of my vision is that why not also consider having, if it's not even a one day or one weekend or 2 weekends, where the various alumni of the Premier Division, to start off with, why don't they meet and have a mini tournament among themselves, so that there is that rivalry that will continue even after they have left their schools? But there will be even greater identification and solidarity and support if there are more alumni on board, knowing that they are coming back now to compete, to represent, and to support their schools. And they will not only do it on the field, but they will support in tangible and other ways off the field to the younger ones who are existing in their schools.
So I'm going to mention a series of one-word statements, and then I'd like you just to respond, viscerally to that. Website.
When you say respond, what do you mean? In what way?
Whatever occurs to you. So my first contention is website, referring to the SSFL website. What are your thoughts on the website?
Website, good. And it's really the expectation of getting better.
Right, so let's drill down into that a bit. So the SSFL has produced hundreds of students and sent them abroad. Mm-hmm. One of the things it seems is that the institution could sell itself even more by projecting that, rather than it being common in-house institutional knowledge in
Yes.
the populace, but also projecting that to the world, right? Like let's see evidence of that on the
Yes.
site.
Yes.
I put it in another conversation, the idea of, let's say you have your top 50 performers, and as student athletes, the balance between the students who are performing well on the field and they have the academics to get a scholarship. Rather than leaving that to the individual schools, it seems that the league itself can offer a sort of a platform in which these students are known. So if I call and I say, you guys are the SSFL,
Yeah.
I'm in Kansas and I'm looking for XYZ player,
Yes.
at least you have an idea of who is in this pool.
Pool.
And even if they're contacting the coaches, whoever it may be, there may still be a repository of like 15 students at the end of the year who might come from deep south, Tobago, wherever they come from in the country, lost in central, but they may come from an institution that doesn't have the football tradition or
Yes.
the people who are there to assist with their progress, right?
Yes.
Here's a student who is on, just needs some guidance, right? So having that centralized information immediately puts everybody in the loop, the league, other people in the country, rather than just necessarily protecting the interests of the people that come through your institutional doors as a school, but everybody's clued in. And then it augurs to the benefit of the entire country. Now, this takes me to the next step. You know, and I know you know this because you've been involved in the game for a long time, that lots of times students go abroad and they get lost to football, not because they have stopped playing or they no longer have an involvement in the game, but because there's no tracking mechanism to understand where their progress is or how to make that connection. So I recently spoke to a former player in the league who is from Tobago, who was explaining a lot of the travails that he had with trying to, he had a smooth path to getting a scholarship, but he also pointed out that some players need a better understanding of what the process is and the guidance, and maybe the league itself can do some modeling, outside of off the field for that, bring in your coaches, whoever, the psychologists, whoever, because I'm understanding that the league sees itself as being beyond the 3 months, even though it's playing for 3 months.
Yes, correct.
Right? And let me add to that the league is in a privileged position because it is a single sport organization. It is not the umbrella organization, let's say, as it attains in Jamaica or in other locations where you have multiple sports to be concerned with. You can really, really drill down and have a relationship that is really holistic. Because as you know, the socio-cultural reality that we have in the country, there are going to be some people left behind. And this may be an opportunity for people who overly think, well, it's too difficult to get out and abroad and here are my options. So what are your thoughts on those musings?
Very good. And I like the part where you mentioned in particular about the season is 3 months, but the off season is even more critical, that those 9 months. As a matter of fact, as you would know, involved in sport, the success of any sporting discipline is what takes place off the field or off the court prior to the game itself. If 95%, 99% of those things are handled properly, then it means that it will be easier for the players, coaches, etc., to now go out on the court and the field and execute. And the off season, and that is why earlier I had mentioned about the online registration being an issue. And yes, we could take advantage of this website, the website that should have, right, loads of quality information on the schools, on the players, not only the present crop of players, but those who will be more or less in the lower forms with the expectation to burst into the championship and the premiership division. We should be keeping an eye on them because they'll be coming forward. And also for those who would have acquired scholarships, how are they performing? What are their needs or desires? Do they have any concerns, any queries? And with that data analysis, because in my manifesto, I would have spoken about having a very close scrutiny and checks and balances put in place with analytical data and information, scientific and otherwise, on the players' progress, moving from the lower division into the mainstream of the football, the championship and the premier division, and then those who would have seek scholarships, how are they performing? Are they keeping up to their GPA? Are they having any issues to maintain it? And for those who even want to transition from there even into the national U team or national senior team. So this is quality information based on what we have in the website that could also even enhance the governing body, which is the Trinidad and Tobago Football Association, with getting that bit of information and moving forward. Also taking into consideration, Mr. Chambi, that in the off season, what we also need to consider is putting a systematic program in place, a structure that will collate information on the very set players, those who are interested, so that therefore we have those who are very good and those who are promising, because you know in the growth development, people develop at different times. There are spurts of development, and therefore you may have a player who may not be good in Form 1, as good as you would like him to, and then in Form 2 or Form 3, he shoots up. He gets into his own. So it's about having that scientific and data information so that anyone, as you quite correctly said, somebody, for example, searching for, let's say, a center back, right, from Trinidad and Tobago, not necessarily identifying which school. They can easily go up on the website and see, oh, look, we have 6 available center backs. And based on what you specifically are looking for in the center back, you now look at their resume, and then out of that, at least you have 6, maybe 16, maybe 36 to choose from, which is a greater pool. It can only add, and it can only be advantageous. Why? Because you have created an easy facility for communication link to be there, for information that is of quality and authentic to be received, and therefore the only ones that could benefit the most from it, again, we're coming back to who? The very same student athletes that we are concerned about.
So I asked this of everyone. To your knowledge, is there any certification requirement for coaches to coach schools in the SSFL? Because there are like 100 schools, and those schools are an employment opportunity for coaches. They're like one of the most clear-cut employment opportunities. So any controls in place?
Yes. As a matter of fact, when I entered into the secondary school football league in 1988, around that period, we had coaches. We still have coaches, but at that point in time, there were, the system of certified, qualified coaches was not in place. However, within the last few years, that is a must. It's compulsory that you must be certified. As a matter of fact, you must have a certain a number of subjects that you would have passed at the CXC level. That is part of the requirement, inclusive of English and maths, to be a coach in the secondary school football league, not only at the premiership division, not only at the championship division, but all divisions starting from the Form 1 straight up. One of my goals to share it with the General Council and others of the membership is in the very same way that we are looking, we have presently the certification of coaches, and with the continued certification of them to move up through their grade system so that they'll become better coaches. I would also like to see certification, qualification of the other significant members of the technical staff. So for example, we're talking about the managers of the team, the administrators, the physios, the trainers, so that therefore on board we'll have everyone who is a member of the technical staff be certified, qualified, and competent enough to make that quality contribution to assist the students before them.
So we have still some ground to cover. So the on-field and the technical preparation we've addressed.
Mm-hmm.
But football is an institution, is an industry, and you have students at the schools who themselves may not have an interest in playing, but they have an opportunity to learn to be managers around the game, maybe an interest in being referees, maybe they have an interest in the medical field. So the opportunity of bringing them in a supplementary capacity to get training opportunities is there, but it seems to be an untapped, underserved thing. And I raise that as well because I observed a couple years ago in Barbados, they have had a relationship with Arsenal in the community. So Arsenal send coaches, and it gives a 17-year-old, 18-year-old the opportunity to grow in confidence, to get coaching exposure, to get first aid exposure, all the components around the game. And that seems to me is something that wouldn't cost a lot to put in place. And you likely have past players who are involved in these various fields. So, I submit that because there are multiple avenues for enhancing the game. But let's turn now to the commercialization aspect.
Before we reach the commercialize, can I interject or add to what you just said?
Sure.
Lovely. Some of the present coaches in the secondary school football league are members or they are former national players. So not only are they coaching with their respective clubs at Super League or Pro League level, but they are also involved in the secondary schools, some of the very same secondary schools that they attended. Some of the assistant coaches are also past students and players of the schools. One of them I could call maybe Angus Eve. So there are persons involved in the system, but also to tap on the resources and the talents of those students who are presently part of the school who may not necessarily want to be a player on the field. And that is why even in my manifesto, I would have also mentioned graciously, significantly, that one of the intention is to also assist the students to see other sporting careers through football, so that therefore they could pursue being a sports announcer, being a match official, being a top-ranking coach, being maybe a kinesiologist, a physiologist, and sports administrator, sports newscaster, sports writer, and we could go on and on with the various different areas in sports. So they now attach themselves with the team, especially those students who are doing physical education at the CSEC level and at the CAPE level, Form 5 and also the Form 6, so that it works in their favor, because being part of a sporting discipline, and more case football, then it means that some of the very same questions or tasks or assignments that they will have to perform, they would have already gotten the practicum and the practical experience of it, being involved in a particular sport. So in that way, yes, working along with them, bringing them on board early stages, it's going to be advantageous to them and to us, because it could only be a better and bigger and brighter image and product of the SSFL.
So you have refereeing experience. You mentioned that you started off as a physical education teacher.
Yes.
And physical education is one of those areas that is highly stereotyped. People don't necessarily understand it. In some countries, there's no emphasis on physical education in schools. There's a lack of understanding of how it interrelates with many other aspects of societal functioning, and also even the methodology of playing football.
Mm-hmm.
So that distinguishes you. Your rival candidates have experiences being principals or in the school on that administrative level. What distinguishes you and recommends you vis-a-vis their experience in-house and your very different background?
Well, for example, I've been part of the primary school system since 1981, and then the secondary school system since 1988. And while I would have been primarily in physical education, because of the nature and of the personality and quality of my work rate, even at the secondary school system, I would have ever so often find myself doing administrative duties in school, even though it was unofficial, not being maybe a vice principal or in this case, a principal. As a matter of fact, I would have been offered the opportunity to become a principal in various schools. And I guess because of my competency, but I had to be true to myself and honest enough to the school, to the Ministry of Education, and more importantly, to the students, because being heavily involved in FIFA, it would have meant that several times for the year, I would have been on assignments, ambassadorial assignments for FIFA in various tournaments, and therefore being a principal of a school would not have been the fitting thing to be intermittently being out from your school and not being able to perform. However, because of my regional and international exposure, because I also involved in the organization of programs and the administration of it and the instructing of it and the leadership of it, and also having the opportunity to direct and guide persons to achieve. That is exactly some of the very same things that a vice principal and a principal does. They do in their role as vice principal or principals. So to me, there's that level, there's that analogy, there's that comparison. And also too, while maybe one could say many years ago, Mr. Chambi, that physical education may have been seen as maybe a non-recognizable subject, I believe in 2021 and beyond, it is becoming more recognizable. As a matter of fact, physical education is now examinable. Physical education, just like maths and English, in some schools are even compulsory. Why? Because in order for students who are pursuing scholarships, one of the areas that they will query is if you were involved in any sporting disciplines in your school. So already if a child has a background in physical education, if they are already qualified in physical education, and they also have the ability to play a particular sport, they already have an advantage to get a scholarship over another person who may not have any sporting ability or evidence to prove of similar nature.
So one of the things that concerns me is the channeling of players, right? So we know that some participants in the league, they're there because it's a co-curricular activity for them.
Yes.
Their ambitions might be modest. Then you have the legitimate contenders for scholarships. but then you have a core of players who are likely future professionals, but some of them don't know that.
Yes.
And they may not know that just because of where they are at that moment, the nature of talent ID as well. But if the league has a role in transitioning to college, what is the league's role in transitioning to the professional environment?
Beautiful question. There's a particular player, one of the better players we had coming out of the secondary school football league within the last few years. Very gifted player, talented, and was one of the best. He moved on to getting a football contract in Europe. But he was only able to hold on to that contract for about 2 weeks to 3 weeks for the most, not even a month. And he returned, he preferred to return to Trinidad and Tobago, where he could have been more comfortable. He couldn't maybe take the snow, the temperature, and the other external aspects of training, etc. And he returned to play for one of the local clubs and get a lot less money. Now, let's look at another player coming out of the secondary school system, who at this point in time is one of our most celebrated players internationally, was one of the fittest players in the UK, was maybe one of the highest earners of football in the Caribbean and in Trinidad and Tobago. Because of his support base and unit put in place, he was able to continue to achieve that and attain that particular level. So we had two persons coming out of the SSFL, and they were on variants, upper scale and the lower part of the scale. And I would want to believe that we need, in addition to also providing for their various needs, the physical needs, the social needs, the spiritual needs, the emotional needs, that mental strength and faculty of each human being properly guided along the way, being strongly disciplined enough and having the self-confidence and self-esteem that we need to continuously work on, that they will know beforehand, this is what you are being prepared for. This is what you are preparing for. Now, there are 5 P's that we can be governed by. Proper preparation prevents poor planning. Proper preparation prevents poor performance. Or proper planning prevents poor performance. So if we plan properly with the very same players and ensure that all the areas of concerns are addressed efficiently and effectively, then we'll be able to have a greater pool of quality individuals and players who will be definitely loyal, committed to represent the Republic of the Red, White, and Black, and also understand their role in this world, being a very committed, being a very disciplined and loving citizenry of this global existence that we are in.
So I'm an advocate of media training for student athletes. I think it is something that helps them not just with their confidence, but if they are going to be moving on to a collegiate environment or the pro environment or just into life,
Yes.
Not being afraid of being in front of the camera, learning how to engage is a useful tool. And it seems that could be a benefit as well if you're thinking holistically about developing players and student athletes and the whole person. I say that because it's not something that costs a lot of money. And in this time, things that don't cost a lot of money, that can be done to scale. But as we wrap up, what are your commercial plans to the league? In concrete terms, what kind of commercial add-ons can come into the league, in assuming that play occurs?
Yes. Well, one of the areas we need to be very honest about, as we are, and an earnest aspect of it is that sponsorships are very important, but I believe more in having partnerships rather than sponsorship. Because a sponsor will come on for maybe a given period of time, 1 year, 2 year contract. When we partner, we have somebody there who identifies with the product, with the entity, and willing to serve there with an indefinite period of time. Having said that, we are in the age of technology. And that is why one of the areas I would like to see us pursue aggressively is allowing the technological age that we are in, that the SSFL be part of it, even with the very same website we mentioned earlier on, and all other aspects of the technology that can work for us to advance the progress and to show the career pathways of these student athletes. We should pursue it. In addition to that, we also have to look at the reality of the situation, that a sponsor being on board for us, maybe let's say for the last 10, 15, 20 years. And because of the economic turndown and the economy being affected because of the COVID-19 pandemic, that if they were to reason with us around the table and say, I'm just using a figure here, that we can only maybe give you, let's say, $75 instead of $100, are you willing to work with that? I think there is something called the spirit of the negotiation, the spirit of the law, that because of the present scenario as it is, that's the only reason most likely a sponsor on the commercial aspect of it will ask if we can take a little cut so that we can all still get a piece of the flesh and survive. And with the expectation, optimistically, that in the future, when the economy is revamped, then we'll be able to return to the figure that we had before, or even a bigger figure, which means it will be even better for the sponsors and, more importantly, for the entity, which is the Secondary School Football League. So yes, commercialization is critically important, and that is one of the areas that we'll be looking towards in this COVID-19 pandemic period that we're in.
So last question is this. Everyone in Trinidad and Tobago knows about the SSFL. They know what it involves and who plays. What they really have very little idea of is how it works on the inside. You know, Thursday, you guys are going to go into a room and you're going to emerge with an outcome.
Yes.
The public is a big stakeholder in the league. And one of the reasons why I wanted to have this interaction with the candidates is to shed a little bit more light and get a little bit perspective on it. But how does it function on the inside? Who are the main stakeholders, and how does the organization really run? What makes it tick?
Very well. As in most organizations, the highest decision-making body of the SSFL is the General Council. But even higher than the General Council is the annual general meeting, which happens once per year. And as a matter of fact, on Thursday will be our AGM, which is the highest decision body making. Outside of that, we have the General Council, which meets once a month in the off season, maybe once every 2 months. But during the season, we meet once every month. Sometimes it could be twice based on the urgency of it. We also have the national executive that is made up of the 3 zonal representatives, 1 a member of the national executive, and the other 2 a general council rep, who will now report to the general council about all concerns and matters in the zone to the general council, and vice versa. They return with reports back to the zone. That in itself, it means that it's a principals league, and the principals are the one who have a very important say in the running of the league. because sometimes of their busy schedule, they will delegate responsibilities to representative, as will very well happen on Thursday. Some of them will be there, some wouldn't be there. And that's why it's important to work closely in conjunction with the principals, because they are representative of the supervisors, and the supervisors are representative of the CEO of the ministry, and the CEO is the representative of the minister of education. And the Minister of Education is a representative of the government in power at the time. So there's that rippling effect to be always transparent, to be always accountable, and to ensure that everything that is done within the Education Act and within working in collaboration with the other stakeholders like the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Sport, the sports company, that at the very end is to ensure that the student athletes' education is not in any way interrupted negatively, but anything that impacts on it will be positive, will be for growth, advancement, and continued development of them. And I believe as long as we continue doing that in the Secondary School Football League, recognizing the stakeholders even within our own domain and on the outside, and we work collectively and with the collaboration and as harmonious as we ought to and we should, then we can only progress and get better and better as we move on into this 2021 and beyond.
So your closing remarks, what would you say to the public of Trinidad and Tobago? What most recommends you for the SSFL presidency, and what can they expect under your tenure?
Well, I would like to thank, first and foremost, the entire membership, right? Especially those who have either openly or maybe quietly vouched their support for me. I want to wish the other two candidates success, right? Or should I say all the best? But I wish myself even greater success. I believe I'm in a good position to be victorious, while I even wish them well. I believe that the wealth of experience, knowledge, and competency that I have in bringing to the table, in bringing it to the SSFL, that we could only grow and become better. And by extension, all those other various aspects of the general public that are looking on closely to see the outcome of the Secondary School Football League, that they will get their desire and their wish, which is to see us move from strength to strength. And at the very end, Merere Gonzales will be successful.
Well, Mr. Gonzales, it has been a pleasure. Thank you for agreeing to spend this time with us. And depending on how things go, we look forward to having a conversation on the other side of the election on Thursday. I am hopeful of having a slate of past players on the male side gathered to discuss their perspective on the SSFL and to render any recommendations that they have and observations. And hopefully we can submit that in this format to whoever assumes the office. Thank you very much again.
Most welcome. It will be most welcome. As a matter of fact, and I want to really thank you for giving us, not only myself, but giving us the opportunity to express our views on this very esteemed site that you have, and wish you all success in your future endeavors in advancing the sport that we love so much.
Thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Pleasure.
Enjoy the rest of the day.
You too.